Good morning. This is the Board of County Commissioners Board Work Session. This is a regular meeting. It is Thursday, February 9th, 2023. It is 9:14 a.m. This session is set to go until 11:30 a.m. This is a hybrid meeting. We're at 3000 Pacific Avenue Southeast, room 110. For public virtual attendance, you may follow along on the Thurston County YouTube channel. I'm Carolina Mejia. I am the chair of the board. To my right is Vice Chair Ty Menser. To my left is Commissioner Gary Edwards. Also in the boardroom, we have County Manager Ramiro Chavez, as well as Assistant County Manager Robin Campbell, and the budget team, who just the topic of today's agenda, which is the budget review discussion. So Robin, straight to you.
Commissioner, I'll start off by thanking you for this time to dive into budget. It feels early in the year, but it's already February, and budget is a year-long process, so we're happy to get this going with you. This morning is informational only. We will not be asking you to make decisions today. Any decisions that we might request will be on your agenda next Tuesday at agenda setting. No decisions today. So I will dive in. Actually, I'm gonna turn it over to Nicole to start us off. The three things we're gonna talk about this morning is the budget development calendar. So we'll be able to get this on your calendars, and you'll be available on the dates when we need to take action on the budget throughout the year. We'll look at an update of the financial status for the county and the updated forecast as we get close to closing last fiscal year, and then spend most of our time this morning on revenue opportunities that are available to you. So I'm going to turn it over to Nicole to talk about the calendar.
So good morning, Commissioners. As Robin mentioned, we're going to speak about the 2024-2025 budget development calendar. So I'm going to share the screen for the public. So currently right now in January, we are looking into developing the internal service rates. As listed on the sheet, there are 4 areas where we will be looking at developing internal service rates. So that's central services, human resources, financial services, and information technology. That's going to be between January through June, but we'll be presenting that information to you on June 14th. So you'll notice on the sheet before you all the highlighted areas of where we will be needing your attendance. So June 14th will be that first time when you'll be able to look at the internal service rates. You'll have presentations from those 4 areas. If you're not ready to make any decisions on that, on June 20th at agenda setting, you'll be able to approve the internal service rates for budget development. And I'll continue to go down. So the next area, after developing the internal service rates, the internal departments will be presenting their budgets. They'll be putting together their budget request and submitting that to the budget office. On September 5th, which is the next highlighted area on your sheet, we will be presenting the budget request to you. That will be delivering the preliminary 1, and that's based on statute. Following week, September 13th through the 14th, there will be budget work sessions. And that is for you to be able to speak about the requests that were submitted to you, as well as what's going on financially in the county.
Those 2 days are just super high level, update of the forecast, and at that time we'll be asking you to set a target for how much you want to remain in the fund balance once all decisions have been made.
Okay, so October 2nd through the 13th, this is where the departments and offices will have the opportunity to speak to you about their budget requests, what's going on in their separate departments and offices. So that will be about 2 weeks long. Following that, October 23rd to the 27th, this will be where we will be asking you for preliminary decisions. These are decisions to build the preliminary budget that will be published on November 20th. And just moving right along, we'll have public hearings December 4th through 5th. We'll ask for final deliberations December 6th through the 7th. certify the property tax on December 12th, and adopt the budget on December 15th.
Sounds easy.
October 26th and 27th, I have Crab and Albion Spokane those days, and that's like from a pre-approved agenda that we do at the end of December. So I want to give everyone a heads up that,
So if the board would like to adjust the dates and get the decisions sooner, that's fine, but we need final decisions by the end of October to be able to publish the book and meet all our statutory deadlines regarding the budget. We've gone a little farther into November in the past, and that just
There's
jams
not
the
enough
team
time.
and leads to errors.
There's not enough time.
It doesn't give staff time. So, if you'd like, we can give you, the way it is right now, you'll only have about a week between presentations and when we start deliberations, and we've only allowed a week for deliberation. So if you'd like to move that up, that's your prerogative.
yeah, either that or I won't be able to be here. I mean, that's been on my calendar, so I just,
With all due respect, the budget is the single most important policy decision that the board makes. And we really need all of you in attendance, so.
I understand that.
I'm happy to come in on a Saturday and do
Yeah.
a couple days worth of
I would too.
work,
I'm fine
so we
with
can
that.
get everything accommodated.
Let's do that. So
whatever
we'll-
works.
We'll adjust the dates. We need decisions by the end of October.
And there will be the option to zoom in or something on a vote or something, I suppose, right?
Sure.
I'm good.
Okay.
Is there any chance that you could just highlight which one of these are mandated dates by legislation? Just so I can put a little asterisk there and I know. to pay
So
attention.
you see every line that has an RCW behind it? Those are required by state law as mandated dates.
So September 5th,
July 28th,
July 21st, the call to budgets has to occur no later than the second Tuesday in July. We get complaints that we don't allow enough time, so we move that date up, but it's mandated.
okay,
Yep,
which,
June-
can you say that again on the mandated, June 21st?
Yes.
June 21st is the date we set.
Okay, that's fine, okay.
The mandated date is a little later, but that doesn't allow folks enough time to do things. Then, offices and departments are required to turn in all of their estimates for expenditures and revenues no
That's-
later than the second Tuesday in August. So you see that August 4th date. We set it a little earlier because we know every office and department is late.
And,
They're all late. They're always late.
Also on July 28th, there's an RCW, is it?
July 28th is when we're closing capital, and that's to allow us enough time to meet a mandated deadline when we turn capital information into the auditor. Then September 5th, that's the first Tuesday in September, we are mandated to deliver the preliminary budget to the Board of County Commissioners on that day. We have no flexibility on that day. Then, the next statutory date is we must hold the public hearings beginning the first Monday in either October or December. That's your choice, October or December. And we do it in December, so, December 4th, and then you can continue for consecutive days, starting on that first Monday, and that's why we hold them the 4th and the 5th.
Is there, I'm not questioning the when, but you said there's two dates in October or December.
That's right.
But we've chosen December. Do you ever do it in October? I'm just curious
We
why.
tried
We
one
tried
year in
one year.
October, yes, we tried in October one year. And we're actually having conversations about trying for October in the midterm, in a biennium. If the board should keep the midterm very narrow and we do limited changes, then it's possible, we think, to get the budget approved in October rather than waiting until December. But with the volume of requests that we get and the time that it takes to do the review, there's no way. And the year we tried October kind of fell apart a bit, if you will.
I know other jurisdictions do it in October, and that's what I was asking.
Other jurisdictions do get it done, and I would wager that they are very small
Yeah,
jurisdictions.
okay. good.
Yeah.
I don't think no jurisdictions in Thurston County exercise that. Cities, they do it in December as well.
That's
Why
fine.
is it the October or December?
That's
We
what
don't-
someone chose in state law, and if
What?
you look at the state laws, they're from 1963. I have
You
no
don't know
idea
the
what they were
was?
thinking.
Because-
Yeah.
I was just
Somebody's
talking,
going on a fishing trip.
yeah, I don't know.
I'm sure it was well
Skip in
thought out.
November.
Right, I was just talking to Deborah Mungia a few days ago. If I had a lot of time, I would completely propose to the legislature a rewrite of county budget laws because they're a mess. They don't align with when we have to do the property tax, and yet we're bound to report the revenue in the budget dates. They don't align. There are certain things you have to do regarding transportation that are kind of aligned, but not really. There's a lot of complexity here in other areas of the law and then I had no idea. I've told the board before that when I worked for the state of Washington, I had 4 months to prepare my agency's budget, and in the county, you have 4 weeks. And they're every bit as complicated. And when I worked in OFM, I had 3.5 months. A team of 30 people had 3.5 months to prepare the governor's budget. And then you had 3 months with the legislature to refine it and get it passed. Here, we have about 4 weeks to get it done, and it's just not, I don't know who thought that was a good idea to compress, but you have a team of 3 now, a budget team of 3 that does what 30 people at the state do. And our budgets are every bit as complicated, not as many zeros, but still extremely complicated budgets.
Would there be any difference with a charter form of government?
There could be a difference with a charter form of government. You could appoint a CFO, if you will. There wouldn't be quite as much division between your budget team and the auditor's office. And we could set a little bit of a different calendar, but not much, because many of these key dates clearly are in a code county or a charter county. So they apply.
Interesting.
It is. Yeah, I don't know who thought this was a good idea, but we get it done every year, so, yep, good work.
So the last 2 dates, December 12th and 15th, so they don't have RCWs on them, those as well are mandated.
Right,
So the 15th is the last one.
right. You just have to adopt it by the end of the year, and we like Christmas, so we try to get it done.
Give you 2 weeks at the end.
Well,
Two-week holiday.
well, I guess what I'm looking, the only reason I'm looking for definite dates is what happens if there's a bomb scare or whatever. You know, one time we got kicked out of the building or something.
So there.
Is there
there
any
are,
leeway at all? That's all I'm asking.
There are allowances in the law, and at some point in the next few months, we'll do a review of the laws regarding the budget. I usually do that with you every year. But there are allowances in the laws for what happens in the event of an emergency. Those budgets need to be reviewed by the court. Usually, if you have to adopt a budget at a time of
It's
emergency.
a declared emergency.
Yeah, there's a lot of extra stuff we'd have to do, so like, we've,
Not anticipating anything, just wondering.
no, no, we're not. But we managed to get it done in a pandemic year, we worked through a storm one year when the lights went out, I had paper copies for the board, so we were able to work even though we didn't have electronics that year. So far, we've managed to work around, but if there were some type of disaster, true disaster, there are laws in place.
Does this building have a generator set up to help us with electricity if the city?
Don't know.
I'm sorry, what was?
Generator this
Is there a
building.
generator
Generator?
that runs this building?
I
if the
don't
power
think
is down?
so. I can certainly check though.
I mean, just wondered
Yeah,
about
I don't think
essential
so. I think if the
operations
power
and all.
goes out, we do what we did in building one, we sit in the dark.
I think it was like December 13th,
Do it like this.
2018, when
That's right.
you guys were
We got
supposed to vote on the
flashlights on
final
our stuff.
location for the
Something.
courthouse, and there was a bomb scare.
Something, yeah,
And then-
I always thought maybe it was some nefarious thing or something to do with that, but I
Yeah.
didn't know.
We reconvened
It
when
wasn't
we
me,
were
I can
able.
tell you that. Got kicked
were
into my
just trying
lap,
to get
and
out
then we
of the
had to
budget.
decide in January, so I was sort of hoping that decision was gonna get made.
Okay, just
But
wondering.
otherwise, we could just huddle in the parking lot and pass the
Keep-
budget.
keep going.
Start
Sure.
binder, start.
That's right. I don't know, we'd have to look at the meeting rules about.
You have to
where
be in this room.
There's emergency rules around that too. I think our alternate location, we'd all go out to the emergency center at Tilly and conduct business there.
So to move forward, the next page is about Amendment 1 and Amendment 2. So this is amending the 2023 budget and the calendar for that. The one date to note on here is June 6th. That's the date for adoption that we would need to have you present to amend the 2023 budget.
This is in 2024 you're talking about.
No.
No, the 2023.
We'll do
Oh,
two
two
amendments
amendments.
this year, so there's some coming.
Yeah, so the budget that we're currently in right now, we will allow the department.
Oh, okay, cause this is a 2024, 2025.
It's an improvement because we used to have 4 amendments during the year. And this is sort of an improvement.
Yes.
Right.
Alright, I got
So
you.
thank you for that observation. I understand what you're saying.
Yeah, because it says 2024 still at the top of the
Yeah.
page. Yes,
So these two are for this year.
this is for this year for amending 2023. So you adopted it in December, and so we'll be able to amend it June 6th for the departments, so the first half, and then to close up the year, the second amendment. And this
So,
year,
looking at that calendar, June 6th is like, Monday or Tuesday?
Be a Tuesday. We tried to do these, your regular meetings on Tuesdays.
So I'm here, but I'm gone the previous week. Is there gonna be like the review of the amendment? Like, when are we gonna do the decision-making around the amendment?
May 4th.
Oh, okay.
We'll have a
We have to
series
do
of
the
work
decisions
sessions on that.
super early so we can publish them
Okay.
and yeah.
yeah, so great point. So April 27th and May 4th should also be highlighted yellow. Those will be days that we would need you as well.
April 27th and May 4th.
So the first review and then the second review.
The dates of the amendments are flexible, but we like to get them on the calendar early and that way offices and departments know, when they need to do their part and what to expect.
And so then the second amendment to close out the year will be adopted November 28th. We tried to align the first and second review with the 2024 budget process. We noticed that was something we needed to look in when we're building the current 2024 and 2025 budget. What's going to be happening in '23 that's going to impact that? So we tried to align it so that you could see the requests the departments are asking for 2023 that may impact 2024 at the same time.
And we'll adjust the 26th commissioner along with the biennial dates.
So the first review would be October 19th and the second October 26th, and then adopting it on November 28th. That's it for the budget committee.
Well. All right, we're gonna shift to a financial update. You have 3 documents in your packet that are pertaining to that. The first is, we'll look at 2022. It's the one that looks like this.
Leave this for last.
Yep.
Okay.
Oh,
Okay, got
yep,
it.
that one right there. So this is the financial status report that we generally give you. It has what the revised budget was. We're looking back at 2022 to say, here's where we ended. So in 2022, you had a beginning fund balance of $38.5 million. We had anticipated collecting 17.3 million. If we were to close today, we would have collected 115.8 million. So just under 1.5 million less than what we anticipated when last we looked at this forecast. And actually, I'm gonna say that this is pretty darn close to where we were when you passed the budget. The places that were a little down in revenue, in property tax, we always know it's going to be less than what we put in the budget, just by virtue of having to guess high at the time the preliminary budget is published. Sales tax is coming in 666,000 under the budgeted amount, and I'm gonna say that that's pretty darn good. So for a moment, we're gonna shift to the sales tax report, and it's the one that looks like this. Let's look at this for a minute. This is where sales tax revenues have been. I provide a very long history back to 2007 because I think it's informative to show the Great Recession way back here in 2009 and 10. And then we start to recovery and there's fits and starts in recovery. You see 2012 was not a wonderful year for sales tax. But then we hit a pretty steady year over year growth rate of somewhere between 5 to 10%, sometime 15%, super good month. But we bounce along in that range, and then you hit COVID. COVID is the dip. It's the, everyone thought there'd be a fiscal cliff, but we bounced right back up. And then you see 2021, the recovery year, which was stupid high growth, but only because the numbers during 2020 were so low. And then we hit 22, where we're starting to get a little more normalized. The budget had, the original budget had assumed 10% growth overall. When we talked to you about adopting a budget, we were predicting 5% growth, and we ended at 7%. So year over year growth in sales tax was 7.5%. So actually we did pretty well in a year that was predicted to be going to be bad.
That's the full years.
Yep, the full year, year over year.
In April 22, or,
It was flat. It
Yeah.
was perfectly flat.
So, okay, that's kind of what I was gonna ask, because it's just
Yep.
this kind of hole
There's,
in the.
there's no bar because there was zero growth. It didn't go up, it didn't go down compared to the prior year. It was almost exactly the same amount. That was odd. And if you look at December, December is an outlier, and we shouldn't be too excited that we saw 23% growth in December, because Whitney Pearsall is doing some really excellent work looking at sales tax. And what you see on the second page is total year-over-year growth, just looking at December, was 23%, 71% in construction. That is because the Department of Revenue found some errors in one particular reporter collected a lot of money and made all of the adjustments for the entire year in the month of December. So December is off. We don't know which prior months should have been higher, but there were a number of months where this reporter should have reported more
When
tax.
you say reporter, what does that mean? What is that position?
A reporter, I'm talking about a single company. I can't say the company's name or,
A single company made that much difference, huh?
that's what we said, and Whitney did quite a bit of research.
So it's
to
Amazon.
figure out.
Yeah, I mean, because they were doing all
Somebody,
the
it's gotta be-
in-home sales or something, I suppose.
I can't,
Robin is sworn to secrecy.
Yeah,
speculation.
okay, I've heard of this before.
I can't do anything that would help you figure out who that is,
Yep.
or that's all bound by a secrecy agreement, but yeah, so December looks bizarre, but it's because of a huge adjustment, and yes, it did make that much of a difference, but year over year in sales tax, 7.5%, our average growth is 5%. You see in the bottom right-hand corner of this front page, this is year over year growth back to 1992. Again, you see the Great Recession years, but overall, average growth in Thurston County is better than 5%.
Those were rough years.
But we're still not at like kind of pre-COVID levels either. I mean, we're a little bit below pre-COVID levels.
Yeah, pre-COVID was just a ridiculous, wonderful growth in sales tax revenue. We don't know what drove it up. And then the bottom left-hand corner is the actual amount of money collected, where you see, if you look way back here, we were collecting about $1.2 million, and now we're collecting somewhere in the $26 million range. The amount, this is a per month, but the total amount of sales tax, and you'll see that on the forecast page, sales tax collected in 2014 was 12.5 million. Sales tax collected in 2022 was 26.3 million. We've basically doubled the amount of sales tax that we collect. And we don't expect it to go back down. Part of it is point of sale, it's that destination sales tax stuff. Part of it is a shift to online purchasing by people in the unincorporated areas. Part of it is just the price of goods has gone up tremendously, so we're collecting more, 1% on the price of goods collects more, but sales tax has just gone up tremendously.
Let me ask a question about sales tax. I don't know if you're following it or not, but there's some legislation proposed, and I think it's got bipartisan support, and that's gonna retain 0.1% to 1% for law and justice. You following that at all?
Training?
Retraining or recruitment? I think it
Training and
had
recruitment.
retention, I thought, too.
It's for both, training, recruitment, retention. Yeah, I think that's moving forward. And that is included in
That
in
would
the
be in
report.
addition to what we already collect.
Yeah, and it's not, it's just the state gets less.
Yeah,
We're
it
not
takes
adding
off
It
the
would be
top.
an offset.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
it's
off
just
the
an
top.
offset that we get to keep.
So that would collect roughly 6 million a year, 0.1%. It's about what we're collecting on treatment sales tax.
Same
So what
thing.
are the guardrails around that?
The guardrails is really, I think it gives the latitude to local jurisdictions to determine what the training, recruitment, and retention will be.
Wish I could
So is it like
remember.
limited to the employees that you have? It's not,
No.
it doesn't fund you to.
No, for recruitment.
You can hire more employees with that. With what's proposed right now, I don't know what the finished product will look like, but
But you said it was only for law and justice?
somehow, somehow
Only for
it's
law- for
ju-
law
law
enforcement.
enforcement somehow.
enforcement.
Well, I'm
No
just,
law and justice,
I'm
law
just trying to figure out
enforcement.
how that would connect to a public safety tax.
Well, we have to probably look into the details of this proposal.
Yeah, if you've got a bill number, I'd love to look it up.
I'm tracking that one, I'll give it to you.
Okay, I'll have to look for that.
We might wanna advocate for that at some point.
I think your position is in support of that.
Just wonder.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, before we have to ask our own taxpayers to help us with this problem of sheriff staffing.
Mhm.
We can get help from the state. it would be better.
Much better.
Or maybe a combination.
All right.
Yeah, I wouldn't wanna give up the potential of the one.
Maybe a combination. If this is a 1/10 of 1%, as this bill that has no strings attached, that allows you to do what you intended to do in terms of public safety, that's good. But as far as I'm concerned, it's only for law enforcement.
It's quite a rebound
The
from
public,
defund the
the
police. I mean, it
public
really-
safety option that you will see later today gives you the latitude to do more. Or a little bit more than just law enforcement. That's the
Well-
difference.
So let's come back to that when we dive into the revenue options.
Would you give me, in 14, you said it was, and then
Yeah,
in
and
December, what's
it's,
the
you'll
difference?
see it on this page, when we get to this page, I'll highlight it again. Sales tax in 2014 was 12.5 million. Sales tax in 2022, 26.3 million.
2.6?
2022, that's column in kind of orange, yep. So back to this report. Sales tax, a little less than we had originally budgeted, but still pretty darn good. Other taxes, came in above what we'd budgeted. Fines and forfeits are down. The courts, it's the courts mainly. Traffic. Yep, we're seeing a lot less traffic fees coming in.
I would expect that's gonna continue because
I
they're
do
putting some more
expect it
restrictions
to
on and
continue,
stuff.
so when we prepare the budget for 2024, we'll be examining those revenue assumptions. As we go through 23, we'll be watching it. You'll see we're down quite a bit in intergovernmental payments. You wanna say a bit about that?
Sure, so most of it has to do with Blake cases, so we budget the expenses and the revenues depending on what we're gonna get in Blake. And we went get as much as we anticipated considering Blake, so we won't see the revenues come in, even though we budgeted.
We didn't have the expenses, so we didn't claim it. We claimed everything we spent on Blake. It was just not as much as the group had anticipated. So less revenue coming in, but also less expenses going out. Charges for services are down quite a bit.
So that's auditor filings, election services, passports, things of that sort, which we talked about during the midterm, that we knew that those would be down.
Miscellaneous revenue is coming in quite.
Has the auditor hired for that second passport position? That was a discussion.
She said she was recruiting at the time. I don't know if they filled the position.
And I wondered if we're gonna see kind of a climb up, and because that, when she came and presented, that was one of the main topics of conversation.
There is more revenue, but I don't know if she has gone through that recruitment
I
process
don't
yet.
know, but we can certainly check on that. Miscellaneous revenue is quite a bit higher, mainly due
Investment
to,
earnings.
interest.
Because of interest.
Interest. Jeff and his team are doing a
Finance
bang-up
committee
job,
doing a
yes.
bang-up job.
Woo-hoo, Finance
Thanks,
Committee.
Commissioner McGee.
Yep. And then the transfers are higher, this is higher because of this is that,
Public workforce,
yeah,
ARPA
this is the
transfers.
ARPA transfer that you,
Ask one question about interest, and that's gonna be considerably less once we get rid of that ARPA money though, isn't it?
this is not counting
not-
the interest
Oh,
on
it
the
is
ARPA
not.
fund, this is just what's coming in on the general fund.
Oh, okay, do we have a
Yeah.
separate, for ARPA?
This is just your general fund report and
Okay,
you
sweep
get the,
ARPA.
you get the ARPA. We can't sweep the interest, which is why I told you you've got 400,
Yep.
a little over 400,000 available for any use that you'd like to put it to, but I'm suggesting perhaps you might wanna put that towards the elections building at Mottman. So there is that.
Is that because then because we have the kind of temporarily high fund balance?
Yes, that is part of it.
I mean, that's
There's more money
Actually, we've
to
still got-
earn on.
We've got
three
money in
times
there
as much,
yet.
so you would think there'd be three
Pretty
times as much.
substantial.
There's a lot of interest.
Yeah.
But even so, the rate at which it's coming in is higher than the treasurer had anticipated. So, overall, less revenue than we had budgeted, but not by an extreme amount. On the expenditure side, page 2 of this report breaks it down by office and department, how much each office and department is reverting. It is a reversion of 9%. Once again, an extremely high year for reversion, since we usually see somewhere between 3 to 5%. A large part of this reversion is due to vacancies. Also, every office and department that moved into this building, we delayed payment of rent. We had anticipated moving in April. We didn't move in until November. We did not start paying rent until we moved in. So we had significant savings by delaying the move-in date for the atrium.
Because we've given them the budget to pay for the new.
We had, exactly, that's exactly right. So, overall, some pretty big reversions.
And then one of the conversations that we're gonna have this year, right, is kind of comparing that reversion rate throughout the years.
Yeah, I always provide that report to you.
Yeah.
Yep,
Public health, that's just from the general fund, so that's just a tiny little,
that's correct.
so
This
so we
is
shouldn't
only
really,
general fund
that
money.
number is not that significant because it's on a pretty small number.
That's correct.
Percentage is high, but the amount is, yeah, you're right. Good
Yeah.
eye, good
And
eye.
I'm surprised they didn't spend it all. I'm surprised Public Works did not.
At some point, could we go down and just make, because some of these are easy, even if it's reversion, it's restricted funds in some
No,
cases.
This is general fund, this is
This
only
is
general.
all
So
general.
this is all general fund. I will say that, and I'm really glad you brought that up. Even within the general fund, there are some restricted amounts because we put grant revenue into the general fund and you can only spend grant revenue on grants. Certain parts of the intergovernmental payments are restricted. So one of the things we're doing in the new budget system that we'll talk to you about in a couple of months, is we are setting up a code, so that within the general fund, we're able to separate what truly is available to spend on anything and what within the general fund is restricted.
Yeah, okay.
And my recommendation to you is that we appropriate at that lower level. And that will put an end to any office or department booking grant revenue if you, and I'm not saying anyone's doing anything wrong, please don't take it that anyone's doing anything wrong. But what we find is that offices or departments will book grant revenue in the budget. The board will budget expenditure authority based on that grant revenue. And then they won't do the grant activities, they'll spend expenditure authority on something else that does not generate revenue, and that does impact the general fund balance. At this point in time, your fund balance is so high that, you know, it's not a big deal. But you want to manage that better so that if someone says, I'm bringing in this grant revenue, give me funding authority to spend that grant, that they're not then just spending general fund. So we'll talk way
'Cause then
more
the
about
grant
that.
money will go back.
Exactly, well, maybe they'll get the grant later, maybe they'll spend the grant later, but we'll talk more about this when we're farther into the budget process and we know a little more about what the system will do, our new system. But that's something that we're working on. At this point in time, the entire amount on this page is considered available. So, ending fund balance, our projection right now is $41.9 million, almost 42 million. And in the last fiscal management committee meeting, Darren Bennett's estimate is 42.4. So he and I and Nicole were almost right on track. And I do want to acknowledge the work that Nicole has done on this forecast. She did a lot of the work on the revenue, so she did a really nice job.
So isn't it, when you were telling us a couple years ago, like, what the maximum limit is, I seem to remember
We just had a discussion
43
on that.
million.
It was 43 million then, because it's a percentage of the total assessed value in the county.
Yeah,
And when the assessor bumped up the total assessed value, that maximum amount that we can have in fund balance is now at around
75.
70 million.
Yeah.
It's way high.
just checking.
It's-
No, no,
I
good,
did-
good,
I
good
did
call,
too.
good call, because
It
there's,
was right around 50 and
because
I
that
was
is, that,
getting
we
nervous,
always
yeah.
been concerned about this, but, you know, since the assessed value went up, as you may recall,
Yeah, $59 billion.
$59 billion from what was 42 billion or something. Yeah,
So just to wrap up the financial status, is the forecast, the interactive forecast that you're familiar with. You see sales tax, we've already talked about that. The growth has been phenomenal. Future years is estimated at 5% growth. Property tax also has grown a lot since 2014. We collected 34.2 million. We will collect 44.5 million this year, so it's grown by about $10 million over the last 8 years. And we have growth projected into the future at 3%. That is both a 1% plus an assumption for new construction in future years. All other, you see, starts to go down. The other line is interesting because you see that it hovers around $42 million in all other revenue in the general fund. And starting in 2019, it popped, well, 2018, it popped up quite a bit. But then starting in the pandemic years, it went all the way up to $58 million. That's all the COVID money that started pouring in. 21 was still very high, again, related to COVID. And we are starting to come back down to more normal levels in all the rest of the revenue that we bring in. So crazy high pandemic years, but coming back down to normal. And then I do separate out still the money that we're transferring in from the recovery fund, because that is one-time money and it does not continue. So again, super high revenue in the COVID years, coming back down to normal levels in the future.
On your projection on home construction, you said it was gonna continue on. Did you take into consideration the higher interest rates and such that are going on now with loaning, and so that's gonna slow a little bit?
In REIT, so we did project, less recording fees. That revenue is coming down right now. It'll eventually go back up, but right now it's low. And in REIT, you may recall when we calculated revenue for REIT, I calculated actually decreasing revenue in future years, not an increase in revenue. And then turn around about the time that the State Forecast Council says that it's gonna get better. I also in this forecast, in future years, assume that we'll continue to ratchet down the levy shift, or diversion. One of the
Levy
two,
shift.
the shift will continue to decrease in future years. And on the expenditure side, this budget assumes a 2.5% COLA in future years, which I know is very low in today's market, but it does plug it in. And here's the graph. On the flip side, we are still in a position where, looking out into the future, we're in a stable financial position. So that's the forecast update, yes.
Just if you can go back to just a comment, commissioners, and we heard from a lot of offices and departments about the significant ending fund balance that we have in 2022. And we do, I mean, it's pretty telling, 41.9. But also it's very telling how that ending fund balance is utilized in the long term. So if we were to look in a single year to make a single decision, 2022 would be an excellent year. But the decisions the board has made through the process is having the foresight, the forecast, that you will not be making decisions on a single year because the responsibility is to have a good financial outlook. And this is, I believe, is very telling as to the decisions the board has made with a significant ending fund balance to make sure you don't jeopardize the fiscal future of the county.
On that point, can you just put up like the model? And it's like, so I've been asked like, well, why don't you just take 5 million of your general fund balance and fix the ballot processing center? Why are we scrambling around, pulling money out of here and there, and why don't we have it sitting there, why don't we just spend it? But
Pull up the model, the next page.
the answer is this, right? You can
That's right.
plug that
So
expenditure in and
if
see
you
what.
took 5 million out, and we do, I mean, I've said it before, the current year's off the chart for fund balance. But if you took 5 million off of that, then every year would be just 5 million less, cause it's a one-time
Right.
out, and you wouldn't be anywhere close to the 2-month target in the out years.
And then we also left a little padding, right, for the market study, and I know that's what,
That's right, that's coming up, and there's a little bit of capacity in here, and those will be ongoing costs. If you take out 5 million one time, it's a one-time drop, but anything that you add to salaries has a compounding effect in the future.
In addition, we're currently negotiating the contracts with the rest of the bargaining units here in the county. And
That's right.
we assume 2.5% cost of living increase.
We have assumed that, and we also assumed a $1,000 bonus that hasn't been negotiated yet. So once we get the negotiated numbers for those, we'll be adjusting this.
And obviously the board could have the option, because also I've heard that perhaps the lost revenue that we transfer to the general fund, that's where you have the capacity to exercise that bonus option to all county employees. I think that's the desire of the board. But certainly the board can probably forego that and divert that money to something else. You do have that option of taking that lost revenue and invest it on the ballot processing center. Absolutely, you do have the option, but it's that balance. What is it you'd like to do?
That's right. I would also, say that I think that you heard loud and clear from all your electeds yesterday, including the auditor, that they think that their, staff are not adequately compensated at this time. So, you know, we have finite resources. Even in a fund balance where we said, what's the maximum? We have finite resources, and to take the long view, which is the right thing to do, it's not a time to just take a lot of money out of fund balance without impairing the future and knowing that you have competing priorities.
I still think, I think I said this yesterday, but I think it's crucial that we have a good understanding of the cost of bringing new, or, you know, whenever we lose that long-term employee, or even relatively short-term, could have a dramatic delay in receiving benefit from the new hire. And I think that's worth a lot of money. Somehow, we have to estimate that somehow. Institutional knowledge and stuff, it's kind of hard to categorize that, but it is real.
So now would be a good time for a short break, and then we'll dive into revenue up.
Sounds good. And then at 10:30, I have to step away for a couple minutes, and then I'll be coming
What, to come back 10:15 or something?
Yeah. 10,
15?
15?
20 after 10?
Yep.
Are we on, off?
We're off.
No. Is this, I'm just wondering, I mean, are the other electeds and stuff watching? This is
I
broadcast.
encourage everyone to watch this.
Yeah, no, I'm just, you know, for what I say here, I'm just curious, you know, some,
We are back from break. We are continuing with the budget review discussion, and Robin, I'll pass it straight back to you.
Thank you, and I'm gonna turn it right over to Nicole, who's going to walk you through this document, the revenue option. So we're gonna go line by line. I'm sure there's going to be some that you wanna spend more time on than others, but we're gonna start at the top.
That's the one you said was last.
You might, sharing that on,
Yep, just stop, Nicole, when you're, come to one that you'd like to have more conversation about.
So I'm gonna share my screen for the public.
Well, could you orient them to how the report's laid out?
Sure. Yes, I can. Okay, so the report that we're looking at, it says Thurston County Revenue Opportunities. The header, in pink, it says potential purpose, proposed source, rate, annual estimate, and notes. So the way that we're gonna look at the report is we're gonna go down the first column titled potential purpose. So we're gonna look at the different purposes and then what source you could use concerning that purpose. And then the requirements, the rate, how much we're estimating you will be able to receive, and then a note at the end lets us know if it's a vote, if it needs voter approval, and any other requirements to receive that source of revenue. So the first one we're gonna come to, it says any county purpose. So the sources I'm going to speak about are gonna be used for any county purpose that you may find necessary. So that's our property tax levy, which you should all be familiar with. Currently, our property tax levy is at 75 cents. This is before the road levy shift. It's the opportunity to go up to $1.80. So if we're at 75 cents, then we have $1.05 capacity, and this would need voter approval. If we were to do that based on our 2022 certified property values, we would estimate $62.8 million if you were to levy up to the max of $1.80.
Which you would never do.
Which you would never do.
You'd never do. We'd never get it.
But we do have over
you need to
$1.
give yourself enough buffer to navigate the up and downs of the economy.
But that's how much
Yeah.
capacity is available. And Commissioner Mejia, you will recall Representative Orcutt's questions to us when we testified on House Bill 1022, right, 1022. The questions that were asked by Representative Orcutt were, what's the county's current general fund levy, 75 cents, and how much capacity could you, what's the maximum, $1.80, and his point being, we have levy capacity.
Is that a 60% approval requirement?
50%.
Those are a simple majority for a levy lift.
It's a simple majority. That's the option that we were trying to exercise to build a new courthouse.
We should be building more public trust. Have Heather said that before?
Can you say that again?
Okay, I'll just leave it be.
Yep, so we move on to the next, and that is the emission tax. You can, the rate is 5% off of any emissions to events and facilities that are located within the city. It does not need voter approval, and it is not allowed in any city that has imposed a tax. So if the city has imposed that tax, we can do it as well.
We're not able to estimate how much that's worth right now. If you were serious about going down this path, we'd try to figure it out, but it would be a few $1,000s maybe. It would be a very small amount.
So the next is the property tax levy again, and the purpose is for capital projects. The reason why this is separated from the one that we just spoke about in any county purpose is that there is a temporary levy that can be opposed up to 25 years to be able to fund capital projects. And again, that's based on the past year's local dollars.
So unlike the regular levy lift, which could be permanent, this could only be a maximum of 25 years.
Okay, and so the next area is affordable housing. And the source would be an affordable housing property tax levy, and that would be up to 50 cents per $1,000 assessed value. based on our 2022 certified property values, that would be about $29.9 million annually. And so this does need voter approval, and the board must declare affordable housing emergency, saying that there's respect to availability of affordable housing for low and very low income homes.
This one also is time limited, you can only do it for 10 consecutive years.
So I'll keep going and let me know if you want to stop at anyone else. So the next page, the first purpose is criminal justice. In this area, there's two sources. The first we'll speak about is the public safety sales tax. And so this rate is up to 0.3%. You do need voter approval. And 1/3 must be spent on criminal justice. The remainder can be spent on any legal purpose. And if we were to estimate this at, say, just 0.1%, the county share would be approximately $4 million.
Because we do have to share with the cities, they receive 40% of whatever revenue we generate.
Olympia passed this tax.
So Olympia would get a credit off the top, and we think that that kicks in. If Olympia's tax is at 1%, we think that their credit
Exercise
kicks
two
in
is
at,
now
like,
the
oh, it's
2/10.
2% now, then it would kick in at the 2%. They'd start to credit theirs back to them, but the first percent we could collect countywide. Because in any jurisdiction, it can't be more than 3%.
0.3%.
3/10, correct.
So Olympia doesn't get the extra money because they've already passed.
Right,
Their
they
own.
would get it credited back to them. The first, if we only did 1%, they would get their piece of the 40% because they're only collecting 2, so.
Once they've maxed,
Yeah,
then they don't get.
That's the way this needs a little more research because it's that sharing piece that I'm a little, the interpretation is kind of gray, but we think that at the first percent, Olympia would get a share, but they'd get their money credited back to them at the 2 and 3% level, should the board go that
But
high.
their money's not, we don't share in their money.
Yes, we do.
We do.
We receive not 60%, we receive 15% of the city's revenue every year.
Can we skip this one for a second? And
Yes,
then,
we
and then
can
we'll come
Yeah,
back to it?
because I have some thoughts on this.
So go ahead with
Go
it.
on to the
Well,
next
Commissioner
portion.
Menzer, I pass you the baton.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll come back to public safety, sales tax. So punch cards, so this is 5% off gross receipts. It would be approximately $50,000 in new revenue, and it does not need voter approval. But this again is only to be used for criminal justice.
It's just not a lot of money.
It's not a lot.
Is there like some kind of a lottery or something? I don't know if it's-
Oh, they're it's hard to describe them. They're in bars. There's a little,
Some kind of gambling
like,
thing.
it is a gambling thing. It's you put your money in, you pull out a ticket, and then you
Oh,
peel
pull
them
tabs.
back.
Tabs.
The
Organized
pull
crime
tabs.
was real
And then
even
punch
just years ago.
boards is kind of the same thing, you use something like a paper clip, you put it in and it comes out a little piece of paper and you see if you won. And there's X much in winnings in the entire board,
You used to
so-
be able to win a pocket knife or
Yeah,
a cigarette lighter
Yeah.
or
it's
something
a
major.
buck or a couple of bucks,
But
sometimes
what-
you get $5.
What happened with organized crime's involvement, when they printed those print boards out, they kept track of where the winning number was. And then
That's correct.
some of their cohorts would show up at the bar and push the right number and get the big bonus.
So currently we collect 3%. The county imposes 3%. The money is collected by the treasurer. We collect roughly 150,000. If you wanted to raise it up to the full 5%, we'd get another 50. It's not a lot of money. I don't remember the last time.
But it has to go to criminal justice.
It must go to criminal justice.
But
broadly speaking, criminal justice?
broadly. But we, the sheriff's budget alone is more than all of the earmarked criminal justice money in the general fund, so we pass any audit on that.
So the next area is the cultural access program. So there are two sources. Either the sales tax or the property tax. You can't levy both at the same time. You can have the sales tax and the property tax. It's up to 0.1%. And it does need voter approval. And it can't be used in, the county can't use it if a city has imposed it. So we'll do some more research to see exactly what that means. Maybe can we impose it in other areas within the county if the city hasn't? It would be approximately $8 million, and we use that calculation based on the 2022 treatment sales tax collections.
So if it's something you're interested in, we would do more research on it, but it's an option you have. And it has to be spent on the term that they use is cultural access, so.
City of Olympia just passed that one.
Right, City of Olympia passed it, which is why we're not sure, because the language is very unclear. If a city passes it, can we collect it everywhere else? Or if one city passes it, is the county prohibited from putting it on a ballot at all? The law is very unclear in that
That would
regard.
be odd,
It would be odd, the
Why
whole
would-
thing's odd,
because people in the unincorporated county might want cultural access,
I agree.
and to have Olympia
Ruin
preclude
it
them-
for everyone else.
precluding them from having it would
Control the,
seem
yeah,
Yeah.
extremely
that
bizarre.
will also apply
Yeah,
for the
But if you
cities if they want to
read the-
exercise this.
If you read the law and the interpretation that we have from MRSC, it sounds like if one city does it, that a county is too late. So again, if the board's interested in knowing more, we'll do more research, but if this is not something you're interested in at this time, we didn't put a lot of time into it, quite frankly.
So conservation areas is the next purpose. So this is a property tax levy. I think you guys know about this. It needs voter approval. The regular levy amount is, the maximum is 0.0625 cent per 1,000 for conservation futures. Our current levy is 0.0262,
So we're using about a third of the capacity.
Yeah,
yes.
Okay, I wanna wait maybe for Commissioner Mejia,
come back to this one too.
because I have a proposal that has been made to me, I'd like to present.
I never left the room.
I'm sorry, what?
I never left the room.
I
No, you
kept
did
the,
not, you were always right there.
I asked to come,
I kept the,
I asked to come back to Conservation Futures when Commissioner Mejia comes,
oh, okay.
because there's an agriculture preservation proposal that has been made, I wanna lay out to the board.
On conservation futures, just so you know, it's one of the things Matt, right, I'm kinda interested in. Just so you know.
Great, well, we'll talk about it when Commissioner Mejia comes in.
So I'll just mention the next area is also for conservation areas and parks, and that's conservation areas REIT. And that is up to 1% on real estate sales countywide, so not just in the unincorporated areas. We did a calculation based on just an estimate on just the unincorporated area, and that would generate 18 million. This does need voter approval.
That's short of asking the voters to support a park district.
Yeah,
So
yeah, but this money could be used to maintain the parks.
It could.
But it's almost like a impact fee, if you will, you know, cause it's not affecting every resident, it's affecting property transfers, isn't it?
It is only, that is absolutely
estate-
correct.
real
So, I
estate
mean,
transactions.
It's a little easier sell, I think.
it's a real estate transaction, yeah.
A
I mean,
little,
something, I mean, I like to hear more about it, I
Right.
guess, you know.
and we've got the number here for what we think it would generate in the unincorporated county. And the only reason that we didn't come up with an estimate for the entire county, because this is a countywide amount, was in the time we had, we couldn't find the amounts for the cities. But if you are interested at all in looking deeper into this, the actual amount that we'd receive would be
40%
more
more.
than the
It'd be about
18 million.
40% more, probably.
We don't know. It
If-
could be considerably more because it is a real estate transfer. And if the majority of those happen in the incorporated cities, it could be a
I see-
lot more
I see what
money.
you're saying.
So we need to get a better handle on how much it'd be, but again, if the board's interested, we'll do that work. If you're not interested, then
I'm interested, but I have a lot of questions. I mean, if we get into this whole thing about the unincorporated and the unincorporated and the incorporated, if we're taxing across the whole county, but we're only spending the money on the county parks that are basically within the unincorporated area, are we gonna get, what's the justification for that? I mean,
It's almost my objection to the bonding issue was because it's just in unincorporated sales.
Yeah, I mean, a
So
similar
it's a-
argument
It's a
could be
reverse
made.
of that almost,
And
yeah.
you could have, like, the cities could argue, two of the cities, I believe, of the three have passed
Park
park
dis-
districts.
exactly.
So they're paying that. So I mean, I'm wondering, is this flexible enough to be, 18 million dollars sounds like a lot
That's
of
a
money.
lot of money.
That's a lot of money for us to be able to maintain parks, but can we craft this so that we're not taxing the cities?
We don't know. That's
Yeah.
part of what we
Okay.
would need to
I
look
have
into.
those
If
same
you want to
questions.
know more, we'll
I-
do more research.
I would be quite interested in this myself, so just so you know.
So we skipped over conservation futures because I wanted you to be here.
Okay.
And then we go into conservation REIT, and that's what we're talking about right now. Apparently it could be imposed over the cities, and we're not sure if it can be restricted to the unincorporated.
The park and conservation areas?
Under conservation area REIT.
Okay.
And we're thinking about it as a way to help our park funding, but the question is, if you're imposing it over the cities and but you're spending it on county parks and they've already got park districts, like, is that fair, or is that a good thing to do? And so I think we're asking staff to look more into the details of this one. Commissioner Edwards and I are both interested enough to wanna hear more.
Yeah, no, I think we hear that quite a bit, that, we're not investing enough in our parks, and if there's an avenue for that, my question would be, for the countywide, I know that on some we have to give a percentage to the cities. Would this be a situation where we would have to give a percentage to the cities?
So there's nothing in the laws that would require sharing with the cities. I would say that if we are collecting it on the cities, that you would want to do some type of assurance that the money is spread around, if you will, and goes in part to support the cities. But again, it's we need to do more research to see can we restrict it to only a certain area? Can we, what do we have to do? And how much would it really generate? And I don't think that, well, I'm sure you don't have to do the full 1%. You could do a fraction of that, but the 1%'s the maximum.
On the conservation areas block, the bigger block here, it starts off under the rate, it says cents per 1,000.
It's a millage rate. It's the conservation futures property tax. So just like the general fund, you can do a levy lift. In the conservation futures, and you'll see in a minute, the roads fund, anywhere you collect property tax levy, you can do a levy lift, because we've got a ton of capacity.
That's what we're trying to do with our bill, to bring the veterans and the available disabilities out of the general levy to have those options.
But with conservation futures, it's not really like you're lifting, I mean, the lid we put on ourselves, right? At the one, I mean, if you wanna call it that, I don't think of it as a lid, but we set the capacity, we set the rate.
No, we back into the rate.
Oh, you back into the rate?
Yeah.
So what did the commissioners pass originally?
You did the board
The
can
board-
pass the 1%, right? You can raise the levy by 1%. And then we add new construction value and
No, I mean, back at the time Conservation Futures was originally enacted by the Board of County Commissioners.
I would have to look back and see what was
They didn't say
enacted
give
at
us
that
the
time.
max, right?
They
said-
may have.
And it just keeps dropping.
I thought there was
right?
vacancy
Yes,
money.
yes, like
Exactly,
just
that's
like
the key, is
property
keeps
tax,
dropping.
when the value goes up, the rate goes down. That
Oh.
happens in conservation futures, roads, and Medic One.
Okay, I didn't realize that was.
Except
the
for in
same.
Medic One, you're in the middle of a multi-year levy.
We're at about a third of the capacity of conservation futures was point, and I thought, so I had not a presentation, I had a meeting with some folks about a month ago. They made a proposal. We haven't had a commissioners check-in, and I knew this discussion was coming, so I've saved it for this discussion. It's about preservation of agricultural land. So, we've got a letter from the Board of Supervisors of Conservation District. We've got a letter from the Agricultural Advisory Committee. We've got a letter from the Community Farmland Trust asking us to declare farmland loss an emergency, and we haven't done that. But in order to try to, we're losing farmland rate at a greater rate than other counties. So their idea is, could we raise conservation futures tax with a specific directive that the additional money raised would go toward purchase of agricultural development right easements.
Easements or something.
So that the county purchases, compensates the farmers, and then preserves in perpetuity those, agricultural
Would it be
lands.
similar to what the county did with the Nisqually, Reach area years ago? They purchased development rates somehow down there.
Yeah, I think.
I don't remember all.
Though we
Purchased development rights once upon a time, but.
Is preserve the land, but you did not purchase the value of the timber. Remember? And that was the biggest, because we couldn't afford it.
There was something there. So when you write the ballot measure, if you should put the levy lift on the ballot, when you write the measure, the board can restrict the new revenue to a very specific use. That is your prerogative. And then any money collected under that lift would have to be used for that purpose.
Well, that, I was discussing that with them because it's never great, I think, there's always a tension, you want to give yourself some flexibility because things change, but if you give yourself too much flexibility, the voters don't want to hear that you just want more money for something, public safety. That doesn't mean anything to me, like I kind of want to know more what you're going to do with that. You're going to hire cops, you're going to fund the prosecutors, with conservation futures, like we just want more money for conservation. Well, I don't know if that sells, but if you told the voters, I was intrigued by the concept that if you told the voters, this is specifically and 100% to preserve agricultural land. I mean, preserving farmland in Thurston County, in my estimation, is a very popular issue. I mean, I can't find anybody, you go door to door talking to citizens about what they care about. They may not even be involved in it, but they understand that agriculture is part of our identity and it's critical. I mean, what I'm thinking about is this growth, we're a very unique county, right on the I-5 between Seattle and Portland. There's all this crush for warehouses and industrialization projects. And if we're gonna preserve this county, how can we really, this almost seems like the most effective strategy. I mean, if we get development rights and preserve these lands, that really sets a wall that sets a ceiling at some point on how industrialized Thurston County can be and how far we can go toward losing our agricultural economy and our identity as a rural county. So I think the voters would really be interested in that. So I told this group that I would let the board know and we would discuss it. So this seems like the at least the beginning of a conversation, because I know
Yeah,
there's
that would be interesting to find out if,
how much money,
how much money, but also, you know, the concept of conservation and conservation lands and whether agriculture, because we're in this proposal, as I understanding is, you will purchase development rights, but agricultural activities will remain, right? So I'm wondering
It
if.
just can't be developed if you
I
do.
mean,
So
it
that's what.
probably will,
so-
because there's,
so
that's gonna be the
just
highest
I'm
value
just
land.
curious if the agricultural activities and the conservation are at the same level. Because when you have the conservation futures, you invest in properties to preserve in the natural state.
We have,
You also do open space. This
Right,
money
right,
could be
but
used for open space.
but recreational for people to enjoy it and everything else. But here is a more a business-driven preservation that we need to probably look.
Yeah, no, it's, I don't know
But
about the
I'm just-
legalities ins and outs.
I don't know, this is something that I just came up.
Anyway, just throwing it out there for just you guys to chew on.
Yeah.
I think that if we were to do something like that, we want to make sure that it is truly ag land, not just designated as ag land, because soil conditions and such have a lot to do with that. And I hear quite a bit about that activity too, that what the heck, you can't grow nothing here, you know. kind of thing.
Just because we designated it.
Designated as such, and that is a good point.
Well, so you can put in there that we would be prioritizing the easements, like, we've got mapping of the prime agricultural soils. And those should be the lands that we're going after in terms of extinguishing development rights. I agree with that.
Food for thought.
Yeah.
So there are certain rules around this for a greater discussion if we do go down this road, such as if the acquisitions of these rights and interests reduces capacity to accommodate housing and employment growth under your GMA plans, then you have to be able to take reasonable measures to offset lost capacity. You have to show that any money collected under conservation futures is being spent throughout the county. And I don't see anything in this short description of the rules that would prevent you from using it for agriculture, but also nothing specific that that's a approved use, so we would look at that.
Definitions of the statute.
Right,
It
we'd
might
have to
fit into
look.
the REIT too.
You definitely could do it with the REIT. The REIT is
But I like the
a
parks
little
idea.
more open,
Yeah.
if you will. But the conservation futures levy, one of the things to note about that is it doesn't have to be permanent. You could collect X much over so many years and make it stop. So you
Until
could,
we
you could
fill a
plan to put
percentage,
so
maybe
much
if we
in the
have
bank for
goals
that
of,
purpose.
Certain number of acres.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it seems like
Yeah.
the REIT is a good option as well, you know, then you can cover both.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah,
I
you
forgot
know,
about that.
because it appears that REIT give you the possibility to purchase for conservation and also parks.
Cause we know, the current levy for conservation futures is like 1.5 million brings in, right?
Yeah, roughly.
So tripling that or doubling that at one point, so the REIT is potentially more powerful.
Much.
So I mean, rather than bringing in another 2 million, let's say, for that, you could carve out 2 million out of the REIT and still have a lot of capacity for
Yeah,
parks.
you can do, with a single action, you can do more. Address two significant issues they'd like to address.
yeah, well, okay, well,
That's interesting, and I definitely would rather make one ask to the
Yeah.
citizens and so they can understand it.
I'm leaning more towards the REIT if it offers more of that flexibility of being able to use it for parks, but also being able to use it for, you know, some conservation of agricultural lands. I know we've heard a lot about it and, you know, if it's something where, I wonder if this is something that Ashley could help us with on kind of giving us the data of the loss, Ashley, right? Giving us data of the loss of
Agricultural
land.
lands.
ag land
Oh.
laws.
Oh,
We have
Um,
some of that from the ag committee, I think.
Yeah, and
So
Can't recall.
so what about so I'm thinking about the HCP, like, let's say in the future, prices go way up on land, for example, and CPED comes to us and says, you know what, the fees that we're charging for gopher permits, I'll call it, are not covering the needs we have to acquire the land. Could this be sort of a safety valve there?
this is absolutely eligible use to buy mitigation land. It was one of the funding strategies that was offered to the board during
For
the
the HCP,
consideration of how to fund the HCP. And the board at that time rejected this option.
Well, cause
So,
I just,
still on
it would just be nice to have a way to not have to increase fees on anyone, once people get used to this, you know. And if conditions change, we're not left high and dry.
I think also the ballot measure has to be very clear as to what the intended purpose. Yeah,
well, maybe we can cut it off into percentages, right? This percentage will be used for, you know, parks and trails and, you know, acquisitions and what have you. This percentage will be used for agricultural land preservation. And then this, percentage will be used for, habitat conservation mitigation.
Sure.
up to, yeah, percentages.
Two
Right.
percentages, yeah, but maybe if that's kind of a way to cut it, right, and kind of piece it all together, it would be something where there could be like a path for each one without.
Right, so I am all for the direction you're heading. I would also, since part of my job is to bring up the downside of ideas, if you think about your opponents to this concept are going to be the master builders, the construction industry, the real estate industry, and it will make housing less affordable, is what you will hear.
So that is,
So that's just to be aware,
Yeah.
those aren't necessarily showstoppers, but those are the hurdles we'll need to jump to make
also
decisions.
priorities, I'm sorry.
Well, I was gonna say though, that if we did embed in there a piece regarding the HCP, that's a huge plus for them, because you're basically saying, you know, we heard you loud and clear, you weren't really thrilled by some of the fees involved, and this is our way to make sure that those don't ever increase to the best that we
could
can.
actually decrease those fees if you want.
We might be able to even
Flexibility.
I mean, it's a way to, you know, to show that
No,
there's benefit.
I don't disagree, but also is about priorities and timing, if I may. So I think that would be a good segue to go back to the criminal justice option.
Do you wanna finish the list and then go
Sure,
back to public
sure.
safety, or we can go back now, whichever? Let's finish the list,
Rather,
because I think that the big discussion's gonna be around public safety. Go, I'm gonna hand it back to you, Nicole.
Okay, so the next area is public sports. So this is a 1% sales tax on rental cars. It does not need voter approval, and it's taxed countywide.
And we have no idea
We
how
have no
much it
estimate
would
for
be.
that.
Potential
I don't think we
purpose.
have very many rental activities in the county.
I would agree with you.
And what would we spend it for?
Public sports,
What does that mean?
so events for children to be able to do
Like
public rec
the rec
activity,
stuff.
rec activities
Yeah.
and things like that.
Soccer fields, baseball fields, pickleball.
So, we don't think it'd be very much money, and you can see we didn't put a lot of effort into this line.
So the next is for tourism. So this is an additional lodging tax. It's up to 2%. This does not need voter approval. And we're thinking approximately 90,000.
You would go through the LPAC along with the.
What is it now? What's the percentage rate? It says up to 2. What is it now?
We collect 2% now, and we collect an additional 2% under this optional tax.
We give you 2% more.
Right.
Is that,
which would be roughly 90,000 a year.
I don't know if that reads that way, but
I wouldn't, I mean, it's an option you have. It's not one I would particularly recommend. And it's totally limited to tourism.
So then the next area on the next page, page 3. is transportation. This is a levy list as well. The max is $2.25 per thousand. With, right now we're at 93 cents, so if we were go up to the $1.33 capacity, we're generating $36.1 million annually.
It's only in the unincorporated area. But other than that, it's a levy lift like the others, just like the others.
For the roads.
Road purpose,
Specifically for road.
is the road levy, that you asked to increase.
Should I move on? Yeah. Okay, so TDD, the transportation district sales tax, that's up to 0.3%. Is Jennifer listening?
I'm sure she's listening, Jennifer.
Approximately $4 million. Requires voter approval. The duration of 10 years.
I'm curious about the dollar amount there that you're. I thought 1% was 6 million.
So that's countywide. 1% is about $6 million on countywide retail sales. This is only in the unincorporated area, so 0.3% would get us about $4 million. Because our retail sales generally don't happen in the unincorporated.
Has that been, have you checked that out compared to what we're getting now in retail?
I did the estimate for this amount of money and I actually pulled up the most recent retail sales from the Department of Revenue in unincorporated Thurston to be able to make this
What are
estimate.
we getting per 1/10 on retail sales?
1/10 of 1%
County.
countywide.
Not county,
Countywide,
just unincorporated.
I would have to look. I think it would be about 1/3 of $4 million.
Something doesn't look right to me on that. I'd wanna hear more about it, but.
If the board is interested in pursuing this particular tax, we will do a lot more work and give you the background. I
I'm
just
not
don't
cra-
think
I'm
you
not-
are.
Yeah, I'm not crazy about it.
Yeah, exactly. So,
I'm glad with these tools are there. For me, it's like, I wanna be put to the wall on this one, like, I know it's not looking great for the road fund, but we're still managing and we're bringing down our level. I mean, if we get to the point where things are desperate, then I would think about these, but I'm not there yet.
we just wanted to make sure you knew what all your
Yeah.
options are.
What is not included here is the vehicle license fee.
That has been ruled unconstitutional and is no longer available to us.
I
Parking
don't
lot?
think we passed that. The city of Olympia still implemented that. I think it was a bill to roll unconstitutional, but.
We specifically looked it up. It's gone. We can't do it. I will provide you with the information, but
Wasn't that
it's,
the Tim Hyman thing, and then it got, what you're thinking of, I think, is that Tim Hyman
Yeah.
passed, but then it got thrown out of court.
Because the Transportation Benefit District has that option. I believe Olympia has up to $60.
they did it when it was still considered legal, but there have been legal challenges to the motor vehicle fee and we're no longer able to do that.
Oh, I would love to
This
hear
is
that.
your only option. And I looked for that. I specifically looked for it because it was an option in the past. And I went, what happened to it? So, but it's not.
Okay.
Sorry.
Used to me.
And I would be happy, I mean, you see the notes, see your TBD analysis. I'd be happy to defer to Public Works because they possibly know more about this than I do, but I specifically looked for that. Moving on.
So in that same vein, where we're just trying to give you all the options, the next is the commercial parking tax. So we can impose a tax on any commercial parking business in an unincorporated area.
We could
I
put
was like, do we
parking
have
lots out
any?
somewhere and take a tax on it.
I was like, do we have any?
It's an option. I
It's
wouldn't
an
recommend it.
And the last for transportation is the local option, the gas tax. And this is up to 10% of the state gas tax, up to $4.94 per gallon,
No, that's cents.
or cents.
4.94 cents per gallon.
And it does need voter approval.
And apparently no other county has even, I think one county attempted it and it got shot down, but
You know,
Put it on the ballot. and-
Yeah.
we're going through this process because the gas tax is not sustainable.
I wouldn't recommend this.
We want to move down to.
State's talking about going per mile or something now, aren't they?
Yeah.
That's the new model. Yeah.
Interesting. So the last few items are just fees that you might consider.
Right, so just the coroner's office. And also trail and permit fees and then parks and shelter and lodging.
Who's paying this coroner fee? Who has to pay the $5.50?
So if attorneys who want copies of the coroner's report
Okay,
or the morgue
just
report,
anyone that needs a report.
yep,
And the
anyone who needs a report, an official report.
morgue rental?
That's for
The-
other counties.
Yep, other counties have a rental fee. The fee could be increased. The coroner already collects a small amount for this. It would not be much money. It certainly wouldn't pay for his pathologist,
It's like a party.
for example. Well, when we think about what does coroner need right now, but it's an option available to you.
Could we raise those fees? I mean, our pathologist fees are going up, and so I'm, could,
What fees?
our pathologist fees are going up to like
We can
almost
certainly
double.
look into,
I-
what we charge others, but
I know Gary didn't wanna even entertain it, but I think that we're gonna have to triage that process at some point in time. And base our autopsies on almost probable cause or some kind of a suspicion or something, because it's gonna kill us eventually.
so again, I don't think you wanna spend much time on these. If there's one that piques your interest, we'll do some more research and come back to you, but they're just, these are small amounts. So let's go back to the public safety, and I'm gonna turn you over to Romero.
Yeah, the public safety tax, has been at least on the board's radar, not just this board and previous boards for quite some time. I believe there is an opportunity, for you to consider this year. And with the understanding that, it may be encapsulating what I call the three areas of the first approach related to public safety: arrest, prosecution, and public defense. Encapsulating those three areas, I think that is probably what maybe support. Had a brief conversation with the sheriff. He seems to be amicable to that idea, as well as the county prosecutor. To the extent of perhaps in terms of if the board considers not just 1/10 of 1%, perhaps 2/10 of 1%. That gives you the flexibility to address the law and justice needs on the first thing.
Let me ask you a question on strategy. If that was proposed, could you propose, say, 0.2%, but in separate voted on proposals? So one of them would be for X, Y, and Z, and the other one would be ABC or something, and give the voters an option. We're not thrilled about this, but we'll go this. And it's almost like a negotiating strategy, I guess I'd say.
So the only way that I can see is probably have two ballot.
Yeah, no,
measures.
it would be on the same ballot, two measures They might vote for one, but they might vote yes, and then they might.
I don't know about that. I think that will be extremely confusing
Yeah,
for the voters.
I don't know.
But,
Something to think about. Gotta think out of the box once in a while.
yeah, I understand that. I guess my recommendation is, speaking of priorities and speaking of timing and opportunities, I believe this year is a good opportunity to ask the voters for a public safety measure.
Yeah, I'm not arguing that. Maybe it is, but maybe there's another way to make sure we get some success out of it.
If they, you know, how the ballot measure needs to be crafted, that is a conversation that needs to occur down the road. But I will ask the board if it's interested for you to give me the direction to start working on the resolutions to put this ballot measure in November.
I'm not interested in a resolution at this point, but I am interested in information.
No, I'm not asking you to give me the direction today,
No, I'm just saying.
because in order to put it in November, there is time constraints. And if the board is interested, you need to give me the direction to start working on this. So,
Well, I need to know more about that bill that's in the legislature, because my whole thing with the public safety tax, I'm pretty much only interested in it vis-a-vis sheriff staffing. Now, I understand that when you hire more deputies, there's an impact to the system, so I'm not opposed to having it, pieces of it, like we talked about, maybe up to 75% for that and up to 25%. I mean, but in terms of what would motivate me to want to pursue it, it's that. So if there's a specific bill that's gonna kick state money back for the very purpose that I'm interested in, I need to know that before I can decide whether we need more money on top of whatever money we may be getting. Because like on public defense, WASAC's pursuing litigation. I think there's gonna be something there related to the needs of local counties for public defense funding. Prosecutor kind of sits in the middle of all that, there's more cases and more law
I'll ask you a
enforcement.
question on
Yeah,
that. Is there a chance there's gonna be a negotiated settlement, or is there
There
a
is a
chance
chance.
it's gonna go to court?
both. We're about to file, I think, and there's gonna be settlement possibilities, I think.
I would think the state would be afraid to go to court because of some of the state issues that they might be stuck with versus a negotiated settlement.
Yeah, well, anyway, that's all
Yeah,
down the road.
that's another, yeah.
All I'm saying is that, my point is just that I may get what I want out of what the state's trying to do to help law enforcement recruitment and retention. Cause that's my motivation for wanting to support this tax. I'm not that interested right now in, in proposing a tax for, public defense and prosecuting attorneys, given what WASAC's doing, only vis-a-vis the additional support for law enforcement and making sure the system stays balanced. But I guess I just need to, now that the legislature has recognized, and we're not the Lone Ranger now, I think maybe 5 years ago, Thurston County, had low staffing and other jurisdictions were doing okay. But it's maybe with this new police reform and labor market issues and all these things are coming together to where everybody's struggling with law enforcement, recruitment and staffing. Now we're not the Lone Ranger. Now the state's stepping up and gonna maybe help us. I'd much rather the state let us kick back money that would go to them than us having to ask more money out of our local constituents. So, I could get there, but I'm not there right now.
where I'm at is I would like to, kind of on a parallel track, I would like to know more about the criminal justice tax, but also know more about this bill coming through as well, right? Because while I feel like the bill will fix our situation now, it won't fix our situation in the long term of, we're still the lowest, staffed. I know that's one of the big talking points, is how low our staffing is in terms of law enforcement. And so if this would be able to give us an avenue to kind of be more towards the middle instead of the lower part of that, then I would be more in support of that as well. And I would want to know more about the bill, like how, is there a time limit on it? Is like, what kind of funding is it specifically? Is it specifically just for training? And if it's for
No.
recruitment, what kind of? So I need all those details
Yeah.
and,
It is retention, and one of the things I'm kind of remembering now and talking about this is they're shooting for a national average per thousand population served. You know, you often hear, I think the rate way back when I was sheriff was, I had one deputy maybe per thousand ratio or something like that. They're shooting for something like 2.3 officers per thousand population in this legislation. That it would allow jurisdictions to attain that level of service.
So that means we get a ton more money than other
Yes,
jurisdictions
that's right.
because we're farther away from that
Yeah, I
2.3?
think you're right. I don't know that, but it's in there somewhere.
Well,
So a
I'll-
lot
I'll-
more to be
that's-
known.
I'll
so
bring-
that's kind of what I
I'll
wanna
bring-
know.
Yeah, I'll bring the details of the bill. But also, I think in terms of this particular strategy along the lines that Commissioner Mejia is doing, it's still gonna be a pressure for you to bring those up because this bill is not going to fix everything. And I think if you see in terms of how much money from the general fund, you invest just about an average every year, it's close to 500 to 600,000. So if you're strategic in terms of,
What's the 500, 600,000?
because you fund sheriff deputies
I know,
out
but
of
what
the
do you,
general fund.
So that's
Yeah.
additionally every year we fund
So
500.
so if you ask the voters to really purposely address the public safety, you won't be have the pressure in the general fund to continue to fund those needs. And then you will be able to have opportunities to fund other needs in the county.
Well, the criminal justice side of it, I think the sheriff spoke about it at our meeting too, the correction side of things too, where he was talking about the huge understaffing in corrections. Would this criminal justice help with that too, or no?
I think
Could, it could.
But I think then you start diluting everything. And I think if public safety is public safety, and my humble conversation with the sheriff, I don't think he was interested in corrections. I think the issue with correction is the staffing levels because there's a lot of vacancies.
But why?
We have adequately funded
Yeah.
the jail in accordance with the staffing study that
Yeah,
was.
because the issue is the staffing, they don't have,
we're supposed to
They
put
don't
that
have-
24. or
we
something.
don't have bodies to
One
cover all
time.
the shifts.
I know, but I mean, that still didn't keep up. or
And
something.
yesterday he was, the sheriff was stating on the options building, he cannot open the options building because he doesn't have the staffing levels. It's not because he doesn't have the positions, because he cannot find people.
There's been a long time rub amongst sheriffs in this country to try not to have the corrections division overtake the operations bureau. Because they're, around the country, they're all run relatively the same.
You mean like in terms of number of employees?
Number of FTEs, yeah.
Interesting.
Places like New York, it didn't matter because the sheriffs run in a different way. And they more run the court security and jails there than not much operation activity going on there. And that's what they're trying to prevent happening nationwide. That just, I just throw that out because
That's
it's,
very interesting.
it's been a long-term,
Why would
long-time
that be?
discussion. Pardon?
I'm curious why that would matter.
Because of the draining down, I'll use Illinois as an example. Illinois has law enforcement authority from the state police. And they have sheriff's offices that have the same mandate of duties required as the state police. And the county funding mechanism isn't too good, but the state always seems to be able to come up with enough. So it's been chipping away in all the counties of providing the law enforcement service. And the sheriff has been stuck with the New York schedule of courts and jails. And so from a national perspective, that has not flown very good with the sheriffs. They want to have the control because an unelected captain in a district from the state police is not very responsive to the public. That's what they've found in comparison to an elected sheriff. And that's been the rub. Now, that goes back quite a few years because that's been going on in New York for quite a while, but it's more recently taken over Illinois. I'm gonna say in the last 25 years, the sheriffs felt that they were losing out, which they were, and the citizens were also losing out because they were not getting adequate response to their complaints from a bureaucracy versus an elected position. Anyway, so you'll run into resistance on that kind of thing, that's all I'm bringing up, the
Okay.
history.
So then, if you'll bring us more information on the bill, and I think at that time we can also talk about the criminal justice tax and kind of compare and.
So great to think about. I'll bring this matter in 2 weeks.
Yeah, because even if it does everything I want it to do, it could fail. In which case, we're back to looking at our
Oh,
options.
that's
for
why I
the
wanna look at both,
public
Yeah.
safety tax,
just
yeah.
right
So,
now,
yeah.
get the information.
That's why I
I'll
asked
bring
for
those
parallel
2
tracks.
pieces of information in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, Tuesday. Tuesdays, you have a busy schedule on Tuesday morning.
So we heard you'd also like more information on the conservation REIT.
But that won't be for this year, right? I think it's just throughout this year to investigate, or are you shooting for this year, Commissioner
I'm
Mensah?
not shooting for anything, but that's part of my hesitation. It's like if,
The unknown.
well, I don't wanna add, voters may raise their eyebrows if we're asking for, 3 or 4 different things. So
Yeah.
that's why it's like,
Right.
if public safety is being
Choose.
covered by the legislature, then that may be where I would, okay, now we could go forward with conservation issues because state has helped us out getting our sheriff's staff.
Especially on REIT, because
Because
to
I don't wanna
me,
ask for everything under the
REIT's not
sun.
a general tax,
Right.
REIT is a specific tax.
But yeah, I agree with you. If whatever decision you make in terms of a potential ballot measure for this year,
Just one, yes.
please,
tax.
yeah, but well, still, I mean, you're gonna be asked the voters to support you with, if it's more than one, for more money.
Too bad we didn't have a bank of
So
trust built up.
I think you, with all due respect, you need to be strategic in order to be successful.
More than one tax.
So just one ballot measure asking for money. At the end, that's what you do. Yeah.
Yeah, money, that's what I mean, money.
Whether it's a tax or whether it's a
The other
fee.
ballot measure, I don't-
Maybe at that time is when in the 2 weeks, maybe that, Robin, if you can bring the conservation futures conversation as well, when Ramiro brings in the law and justice, and we can
Right.
kind of.
All I'm saying is we will do more research both on the criminal justice public safety sales tax and conservation area REIT. And not anything else on this list. Everything else will be set aside,
Yeah.
and we'll have those 2 things
Yeah, and
that
those
we'll
are the
dive deeper into.
Yeah, if the legislature wants to pass a bill giving us a ton of money to support our parks and stuff, then we can focus more on public safety. If they wanna pass a bill to give us money to recruit officers and retain them, then we can focus on our conservation needs and our ag land crisis. But I think both of those are viable.
So then,
And that allows us to focus our efforts.
so then that will be brought back in
The 28th,
weeks, maybe?
28th.
Okay, so it is 11:24. Robin, anything else you need to cover?
That's all we had for you today. Other than, again, thank you for your time. Today, we asked for a significant chunk of time and we were happy to get it, and here we go, we're off and running with the budget.
Perfect, thank you. And so it is 11:24. We are adjourned.